Welcome to the Small Steps, Big Wins podcast. I'm dedicated to helping you take control of your life. Together, we'll explore practical tips, expert advice, and inspiring stories to help you overcome obstacles and achieve your goals. Making small changes is possible and can lead to big results. Are you ready? Let's go do this. Hey, Chase, welcome back to the podcast. You know, I have to say, I think you are my only guest that has been on my podcast the most so far.
I,
And I
honored
love
to
our
be that
conversation.
guest.
Yeah, I'm honored to have you be that guest. We have some great conversations, and I am totally looking forward to wrapping up 2024 with you and your thoughts on it. So before we jump in, feel free to share what's ever on your mind, my friend.
The end of the year is a phenomenal reflection point, and anything that we get into here today can be used at the end of any week, at the end of any month, at the end of any day to continue moving forward. Because I see, and I know I have in the past, see a lot of people that'll get to the end of the quarter two, beginning of quarter three, be like, all right, well, I guess I'm going to go again next year. And they just kind of write off the end of the year or the end of the month or the end of the week. So whatever we get into here today can be used for continuous reflection.
Sounds good. It sounds good. Well, let's jump in because I had a couple of questions for you. I know both of us have gone through a lot of transition in
Mhm.
2024 and have walked through a lot of different circumstances. So, for you, what were some of your challenges this year and what did you do to work through them? How'd you get through that?
Hmm. So, on the personal brand side of things, I made a shift at the end of 2023, and I went from fitness and lifestyle and mindset. And I had some people that came back and started asking, like, "Hey, how did you start this coaching business?" And I was like, I'm not a business coach," and that was the big resistance because people would be like, "Well, you've been in business for like almost a decade. Most small businesses don't make it past 5 years, and you're one of my favorite coaches I've ever talked to. So could you just take a dose of your own medicine, get over yourself, and help me out?" So
It isn't that how all good things really start? Is you didn't go looking for it, it found you?
so well said. It's
Ah,
I had resistance to stepping into the business coaching space for a while because I could read between the lines and then some on it on a lot of what people were doing. And it took me flipping the script and realizing, oh, that means I have an opportunity to improve on the market.
mm,
If I can
okay.
see all the holes, then I know how to fill them. So, 100%. It's been a really fun ride. I did a free workshop about a year ago in December, and two people signed up off the backside of that. Somebody else signed up after it, and I was like, all right, cool. Like you said, when it finds you, and I like to say, go where the energy is.
Right,
And this has
right.
been where the energy is. So,
How did you overcome that initial, like, resistance? Because a lot of us, like, we'll have that resistance to something or we'll feel it deep in the soul and we're like, "Ah, I just don't know if I ought to take that leap and go do something." And a lot of us just or some people, like, they won't work past the resistance. They'll stay in that safe zone. How'd you get yourself to move from the resistance into flow and go with what was in front of you?
I'm glad you asked that question because, and especially like in the online coaching space, you see a lot of people, well, I'm staying in what's authentic and what feels good. And the next step doesn't always feel good in the moment. Like,
Right.
I have a fitness background, and if you want to get a really big back squat, if you want to get really strong, it doesn't feel good while you're doing the reps to get strong. Your legs are crushed. You are tired. You want to go to sleep after your training sessions. If you always feel good and full of energy and like, sure, maybe you're operating right where you're supposed to be, or maybe you're avoiding things. You know, um, I saw a post yesterday that I fully agree with, and I've said the same kind of thing. And this is a similar point here. You know, if you just avoid everything that triggers you, that's not healing. And the same thing with business and professional growth. If you just avoid the things that are uncomfortable, that's not growth.
Right.
Yeah.
How you feel? Yeah, actually, if you avoid those uncomfortable things, I would go so far to say is, are you really living a full life?
Yeah. You know,
Yeah.
it's freedom is self responsibility.
Oh,
And that
interesting. I like that.
freedom is responsibility. And if you can look at that either way, that responsibility is the key to freedom. And I think it was Freud who had a quote that most people don't want freedom because it requires responsibility.
Mm,
It requires radical honesty with ourselves. And that's before you actually realize how freeing that is, it seems scary because, okay, what if I
mhm.
was wrong? Like now I have to admit that I was wrong up until now. Was that all wasted effort? And if it got you to the point where you can realize a new perspective, then no, it was not at all wasted effort, in my
Right,
opinion.
right. How often we tell ourselves stories that really aren't true. Like they would say, "Oh, I walked through that terrible situation and they regret it." I'll give you an example. I was out to dinner the other night with a girlfriend of mine, and I was explaining some my challenges that I had this year, and some of them were pretty extreme. And she said to me, she said, "Oh, she said, I am so sorry that you had to walk through challenge X, Y, and Z." She's like, "I'm so sorry you had to experience that." And my response to her was, "No, I'm not sorry at all. I'm
Hmm.
glad I walked through those very difficult challenges because I allowed them to make me a stronger person in the inside. I allowed them to change me and to become more resilient if something like that happened again. I allowed those circumstances to make me a better person and to learn from the
Hmm.
mistake." So I've taken that challenge and just flipped it around and looked at things that would be quote unquote bad because like it's really just how we define the words, right? It's how we say the language. To me, it's not
Yes.
bad. It's just like a situation that's just okay, it happened. How am I going to use this to further my growth and benefit me, regardless if it's good, bad, or indifferent?
100%. And I like what you said there about, we want to believe the story that it was. And you've experienced story work, one of the
Mhm.
modalities that I have in my toolkit as a coach and my mentor in that, one of the first things that you get taught in the level one is to not believe your client's stories.
Mhm.
Yeah. Um, and I am all about not feeling bad, not and there is this, we'll call it almost toxic positivity that everything needs to
Mm.
always feel good. You
Right.
know,
Oh, I like that term, toxic positivity.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Me
And
too.
there's a quote from the founder of Four Seasons. He said that excellence is the capacity to take pain. You know, how many people want to achieve greatness? Everyone. But anybody that's ever done anything difficult knows the euphoria and terror it takes. It's
Right.
the and that story goes on to say, that there isn't a single book that reads, "Hey, I had this idea, I started it, everything went great." The end.
Yeah.
James Dyson finished his autobiography by saying, "Listen, it's easy for me to celebrate my doggedness now. I made $300 million last year, but I'd be lying to you if there weren't times where I went inside my house, had my wife look at me like I'm a failure, and cry myself to sleep. I got
Yeah.
up and did it again anyway because excellence is the capacity to take pain."
Mm.
So,
Would you say that also, in addition to excellence, in order to achieve that, there has to be a high level of conviction and persistence in order to continue to do something that when you have others around you that are looking at it saying, "Boy, you're not it doesn't look like you're achieving in that area." But yet you've gotta have there's more than just that excellence and that pain within the excellence.
yeah, it's conviction and persistence. I like to say there are two secrets to success in any endeavor.
Mhm.
Start and keep going.
I love it.
Yeah. underthink it. And yeah, as far as others saying, well, I don't know if you can, unless they've done what you're trying to do, why are we taking their advice?
Oh, good point.
Yeah.
Good
You
point.
know,
How often do we go to friends and we're like, "Hey, I've got this situation going on at work," or "I've got this going on," and either they're not in the line of job that we do, they have no idea, they haven't done it before,
mhm.
and we're asking for their advice on something
Yeah.
they haven't walked through. I heard it said that if you are writing a book and you want the title to it, not to put suggestions out on Facebook. Because your Facebook friends aren't going to be the ones to be able to title your book that you're writing. And I thought that that's so it's so true, but then it also can be applied to the challenges that we have. You know, it's good to get some input, but you have to be very um, measured or very objective with the input that you receive.
100%. A lot of people under the age of 30, I don't know, 40, 50, even like if your parents are alive, you likely want to go to them for advice, right? Um, and
Sometimes.
sometimes,
But
it,
sometimes you get old enough to realize, "Wait a minute, what got like, my parents' advice is what got me here, but if you
mhm,
need to get from point A to point B, what you did to get to point A, and you need to go somewhere different, you can't do what you did to get to point A. You have to do something different. You have to go down a different path. You have to seek out different types of advice." So sometimes sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but
um,
sometimes it's like your parents aren't the ones you're going to go to, you
that's
know,
exactly it.
yeah, that you need to seek out somebody else with a different perspective.
Yeah. I mean, I have clients who do 15 to $20,000 a month in their coaching business. And then I have clients who come in who are younger coaches, younger people, and they got their parents in their ear, like, no, you just need to go get a job in finance or this or that and get
Yeah.
a simple, reliable job that would likely, like in the next 10 years, they'd be lucky to make ten grand a month in that job,
Mhm.
you know?
Yeah,
And that's whoever you're going to help for, that's their belief system, and their belief system created their worldview and created their results.
right.
So if you're trying to operate for different results, it'd be very beneficial. Go find somebody with a belief system and experience that will help guide you there.
I'm glad you talked about beliefs. I have a question out of that would be because I know I struggled for a long time taking on other people's beliefs and not
Mhm.
even realizing that I was taking on other people's beliefs. So what suggestion do you have to people that are asking the questions like, wow, how do I know whether that's my belief or whether that's somebody else's belief that I've just taken on myself and chosen to believe? Because that ties in with the right going to the parents and saying, hey, just get
Mhm.
the safe W-2 job. It could sound good to somebody who's floundering and not making any money in their coaching job.
Yeah.
So it could make sense to them. So can you tell or what's your advice?
I believe it was an Alan Watts quote. When you learn to think about your thinking, you become free on a whole new level or in a whole
Mm,
new way. And there's layers to this, right? Because from the minute that we can understand language, even before that, when we can understand moods, and we are being programmed by other people's thinking. It's like there's this whole philosophical side of this answer where is there anything that's organically ours, or is it passed down from generations? I mean, epigenetics is a really interesting field that up to 7 generations forward and back, stuff can imprint in our DNA. And
oh,
there's
wow.
a there's a there was a study done with rats that they would uh, let them smell roses, and then I believe shock them or spray them with water. Uh, and they saw in numerous generations forward that the offspring had like 10,000x the amount of receptors to be able to smell roses.
Hmm,
It's so when we look at epigenetics like that, there's a whole different level to that, but we'll just keep it like in this generation. Think about our thinking. Like, okay,
hmm,
okay, I don't like this. Why don't I like this? What's the emotion I'm feeling when I don't like this? Where did this come from, and why is this belief the way it is? And I like to call it getting subjectively objective, because if
okay. So
If any of us were ever able to get truly objective, that would be very impressive.
yeah. Yeah. So it's really just asking your if I'm hearing you correctly, it's just asking yourself a series of questions on a particular belief that comes your way. Why am I believing this? Is, like, what does this do for me? How does this it almost would be like, how does this serve me?
Yeah.
I would you also take it one step further and ask yourself, what am I how does it resonate with me in my soul, this
Yeah,
belief? It's not just a head, game, what word am I looking for? It's not just thinking it through, it's
yeah,
also feeling what's happening in the body and going to the
exactly.
heart on the
Yeah,
belief as well.
yeah, yeah, and that's when you ask what emotion am I feeling that created this
Mhm,
belief? You know, cool. Where in my body is that emotion? What does it feel like on a scale of 1 to 10? How intense it is? Is it? And when is the earliest time I can remember feeling this emotional signature? Oh, look, we might just pull a thread and end up at the memory that created this belief structure.
yes.
The time we got yelled at by our parents, the time we watched our parents arguing, whatever it be, the time mom and dad announced they were getting a divorce, the first time we got dumped, like
Mhm,
cool, that imprinted on our nervous system in some specific way. And it's this stuff is very real, and I want to be very clear that like there is the side of going out and creating supporting evidence. So we go back and we
mhm,
find this stuff and we air it out, we feel it, and we clear it up and out of the nervous system and up and out of the emotional body. And now we go take action to create a new reality and make sure that we're not just spiritually gaslighting ourselves by playing mindset tricks and saying, I am successful. And then going and expecting a briefcase of money to show up on the front door because you decided
mhm.
you're successful.
Right, right, right.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
no. So, you know what? As people look to closing out the year
mhm.
and evaluating what they've done, evaluating beliefs, because sometimes when you start evaluating those beliefs and then you realize, wait a minute, I didn't really, that was somebody else's belief, it wasn't
Mhm.
mine, or you look at circumstances that happened over the course of the year, regret might start to
Mhm.
roll in there and say, "God," like, and I can hear the voice in my mind going, "Oh my god, I can't believe you're so stupid. You believed that belief and it's really not true anymore, or it's a different paradigm, or I can't believe that circumstance stance happened." So, in your experience, what's your advice to anyone struggling with the regret as they reflect on, let's just take this past year?
Hmm. Does the emotional signature of regret help them to move towards their goals?
Good.
Regret. Let's just open that word up, put a space in it, and put an extra E. Regret. Why, once we are done, like go back. If we need to go back, take a look at that belief system. What happened? Did it serve us at all? Did it hurt our forward progress? How can it be shifted to help forward progress? And once we decide that, why would we ever go back and take a look at that again? Why would we
Mm.
go back and sit in that emotional signature?
Right. Right, because it's
Mm,
only gonna map itself back on the body again anyway.
mm,
Regreet. I love the reframing. That's one thing you've taught me as we have coached before and we've had
mm,
conversations over the last year, probably almost a year now.
mm,
That's one thing I appreciate about you. You just absolutely challenge me to reframe my thinking and reframe my words
mm,
and how that can in an instant change how I look at a circumstance or an experience or something that I'm regretting. So, yeah, I just appreciate that, and I hope listeners are actually taking away that particular pulling that out and realizing, as you said before earlier, it's the stories we tell ourselves. What stories
yeah.
are we telling ourselves? Is that really the story and how that happened? And that was one thing I got out of coaching. It's in my book as well. When I realized when I interacted with the stories using story work, because I've done that
Mhm,
as well, uh, I realized that, wait a minute, I told myself a certain narrative, but it could have been something else. I mean, it was a story that happened when I was 6 years old. How do I
yeah.
really, really, really accurately remember that story or not? And then once, and it's not lying to yourself to reframe something. It's just looking at it objectively and saying, well, could I really have remembered that the way I thought, or was I mapping certain things onto it that I thought was true, but may not have been true?
Yeah.
And it, for me personally, was really, really freeing to go back and look at that and realize maybe it wasn't what I thought it was.
Joe Dispenza often makes the point when you hear him talk that we can misremember up to 50% of things.
Oh, wow.
That we can make up 50% of how we remember something. So
Mhm.
if as a child, or if we decided to imprint an emotional signature onto something, or if an emotional signature imprinted by the way we reacted, well, then we can spin up a story to match that emotional signature even more. Right.
Mm.
I'm glad you said it's not lying to ourselves, because I was going to say, I- as we're going through this, so many people, it can be really easy to be like, well, no, you don't understand. This is the way my life is. That's the way the story that you're telling about your life is. And
Right.
like, yeah, the situation will be the same forever. How you view it and how you react to it is all up to us.
Right. Right, right. And you know what's interesting is how bad you think your life is at the moment. Somebody else looking at it from the outside might not think the same way. They might want the life you have that you think is so terrible. They would trade places with you in a second. So it's just, it really is a matter of what lens we view our circumstance through.
Yeah.
You know.
Somebody out
So
there is begging for your problems.
yes. I love that quote.
Yeah.
I love it. So, Chase, what are some of the things that you do since this is the end of the year, end of 2024? What do you do for yourself to reflect on the year? And I'm going to leave the question right there because we're going to follow up with another podcast on making 2025 your best year ever. So, let's just
Mm.
close out 2024. What are some things that you do to close out your 2024?
I go back and I look at the intentions I set for 2024,
Mhm.
and did I hit them? Did I miss them? Did I surpass them? And what actions were taken uh, to end up where I was? And I get as objective as possible. To fear to face, or to refuse to face an issue is to fear the worst is true. And
Mm,
we can get stuck in this. Well, I don't want to look at the numbers in my business, or I don't want to look at this. And it's like, well, it's likely because you don't think you're going to like what you see.
mm.
You know, uh,
What did
so
you do with if you when you looked back, if there was something that you didn't like what you saw, what did you do with it?
first, ask myself, well, do I not like this, or is it just something to improve on? And then, okay, cool. How do we improve on that? Like, cool.
Yeah.
I didn't schedule enough sales calls. I didn't, but if in hypotheticals, say I didn't schedule enough sales calls, say I didn't book enough revenue, say I didn't pay off enough debt, whatever it is, say I didn't
Mhm,
make enough money in the stock market, say I didn't, cool. Could I have done the other thing? Did I have time and energy and resources to do the thing? If yes, cool. Why did I squander those resources? What else
mhm,
was I doing? Cool. How can I take that task off of my schedule next year so that I can move forward?
mhm, mhm. So, really, it's just being as objective as you can. You mentioned that before. Just
Yeah.
really rather than trying to go to the emotional end of it and beating yourself up for it because, honestly, let's face it, you can't change the past.
Mm.
You only have right now, and you have the ability to influence the future. So
Yep.
so why go down that road when you don't have to? For those listening, can you get practical for a moment? Just because we're looking at it from a high level, right? You know, like you're
Yeah. Yeah.
looking back on
Yeah.
things.
Yeah.
For a practical moment, for the small step, did you write this stuff down on a piece of paper? Did you put it on a Google Doc? What did you use that's effective for you that you actually remembered and came back around to it at the end of the year, you personally?
Yeah. So I start with um, writing down in my journal,
Mhm,
like getting real, like visualize it and feeling it, right? Like you want to feel that it's where you want to go. And then after we have the compass from our heart center set off in the distance, then I looked at the steps to take. and
Okay.
those I house on a sheet on my computer. And
Gotcha.
and you only know what steps to take if you've already made progress toward that goal before.
Right.
So unless you have very hard data on like, all right, well, I want to make $200,000 in my coaching business this year. Okay, well, unless you've made $200,000 in your coaching business before, do you know how many calls you need to book, what your
Mm,
close rate's going to be, what your how many clients are going to re-engage with you after their initial. So you can part of it is taking a look at the numbers that I put out and like, were these accurate? Did I hit these? And
right.
if I did, were they accurate?
Right. Just take your goal and then work it backwards into
Yep.
little small actionable steps.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
it makes sense. Me personally, I use a journal. I have well, not a journal, but it's one of those calendars. It's a pro calendar where
Nice.
you track out your days and you write down. So then the one that I have, it uses every quarter, you can set goals for yourself. Like you can set the yearly goal in the beginning and then you can
Mhm.
set quarterly goals and then you see if you're hitting your quarterly goals. So for me, that's I don't yes necessarily do the electronic because uh personally, sometimes I forget.
Yeah.
I'll put them in the notes section of my phone, and then I'll open it up a year later. It's like, "Oh, I forgot it was there," but the journal is what I use all the time. So, Chase, as we wrap up 2024, and I love asking this question to everybody, what is one small step that somebody can do today that's gonna help them change their tomorrow?
That's my answer.
I
Take
knew
deeper
that.
breaths. Just take deeper breaths. You will listen to others more. You'll hear yourself more. You'll be able to make better decisions and you will make better, more steady forward progress.
Love it. Love the breath work. Is there anything else you wanted to touch on that I might not have asked?
No, no, as always, it's phenomenal hosting. Great conversation.
Thank you. Same. How can people find you?
Come knock on my front door. No,
I may do that. We live
right,
closer now.
right. Um, Instagram at coach_chase_Tolleson is the best way. Come, if you follow me, you will most likely get a video note directly from me.
Awesome.
So come on
All
over.
right. Well,
Yeah,
Chase, thank you for helping us close out our 2024. And I look forward to the conversation on us opening 2025.
me too.
Thank you for listening to another episode of the Small Steps, Big Wins podcast. I value your time with me and I seek to make every moment count. In order to make lasting change in your life, listening is usually not enough. So I want to ask you, what practical steps are you going to put into action today as a result of listening to this podcast? Remember, any step, any action, no matter how small, starts your journey to a big win. And if you're not sure where to get started, reach out to me and let's have a conversation. Until next time, love yourself, then love others. Peace.